Head over to thebestsongever.com and purchase our new hit, Together Again. It is a cover of Smokey Mike and the God King. That's Jeremy Boring and Michael Knowles. And with your help, we will smash our way onto the Billboard charts.
I'm a firm believer that an effective anti-war movement has to be conservative. Because when you look at the things people fight for, the things that motivate people to enlist, it's God, country, and family. And when the left is anti-war, the way they discuss it is God, country, and family are stupid and you were an idiot for fighting for those things. And what conservatives can say is those things are valuable, those things are good, you are a brave and good person who was manipulated by liars who don't care about those things and we're using you to profit.
Well, I do think you're half right, Seamus. What I often hear
It's better than usual.
Better than usual. Yeah. From when the left talks about anti-war, there are people I know I've had conversations with, and I'll make sure I carve out respect for them. But typically it's this country, this war is an affront to family and faith and stability in the economy for the other country. America sucks. We hate America. America should be funding these things.
Yeah, a lot of this is not for profit. A lot of this is not for strategic American goals. I don't think these people care about America. These people literally go to the Bohemian Grove and do mock child sacrifices. They literally do spirit cooking where they take bodily fluids and try to summon demons. They literally go to private islands where they hurt little babies and children in unspeakable ways that we can't even mention here on this particular frickin' broadcast. These are evil, sinister human beings that I truly do believe are worshiping a larger outside entity, a satanic, evil entity. It sounds reductive to say that, but if you look at everything they do, it doesn't add up until you put in the kind of spiritual aspect to this. They have been hijacked. They are not real souls. They are individuals serving the greater evil.
I changed my answer to that.
Real quick, I want to ask a very, very quick question of everybody. Okay, Seamus, have you ever been arrested?
Oh, man, why you got to ask me that here? Yes.
You haven't? Okay.
Yes.
Tucker, have you ever been arrested?
I've been taken into custody twice.
Charlie, no? No? Okay. Have you ever been detained?
No.
You ever stopped and questioned?
In Israel, yeah.
Okay. That means, and Ian, you've only ever been detained?
Yeah, my buddy had weed in the car.
That means for everyone here on the stage, you have served. Oh, we know you've been arrested.
7 times for journalism.
Okay, this means
got arrested on the way here.
That everyone here has done more time in any context than anyone on the Epstein client list for the Epstein client list.
It's like the liberal economic order, man. It's the least worst world order.
Shout out to Owen Schroyer for making that point.
But this is the issue that brings people together, and I want to kind of change this conversation a little bit, because if you look at left, right, center, everyone agrees, hey, what they were doing for decades with the FBI covering up child abuse, when the witnesses and people came to them and said, hey, this is happening, police officers, judges, prosecutors, politicians, celebrities, media moguls all played a part in it. Meghan McCain said that literally everyone in Washington knew what was going on. Everyone was afraid of Jeffrey Epstein. This is something that will bring everyone together and make people understand, hey, the system is rotten. It's corrupted, and it can't be fixed until we deal with this single issue.
We've not only have heard these stories of Epstein, the Lolita Express. Madison Cawthorn made some allegations.
Madison Cawthorn was right.
Was right, because we all saw, as much as you probably didn't want to, that video out of the Senate, was the Hart Building hearing room floor, which was very disturbing, and I do hope they decontaminate that building. I mean that sincerely.
Well, he should be arrested. What he did was worse than what 99.9% of people on January 6th did. And he should be arrested and put in federal prison.
I think it's worse than what 100 did.
Well, not beating a police officer. There's a couple people that did, but yeah.
Well, it is a desecration of the space. I mean, most January 6th people, I've interviewed a lot of them, as you have, and they're all, they were there because they believe in the system, because they all had pocket constitutions. They thought it was real, and they were so shocked to see their election stolen, which obviously it was, and that they marched on the Capitol. But they were there to uphold the system, and some did it imperfectly, and some got out of hand, of course. But this guy is there to degrade it, to defile it on purpose. Like, there's no reason to do that in a hearing room, and to post it on the internet. Like,
let's make this distinction here as it pertains to January 6th. There were people who were violent. That's bad. You should be held criminally responsible if you're attacking cops. I agree with you, Charlie. There were people there who were let in by the cops, but knew that something violent was happening. But more importantly, I have spoken with many people who showed up an hour after any violence cleared roads, no gates, doors wide open with cops smiling, welcomed them in and took selfies. And those people, I've met 2 of them, they're going to prison for 18 months. And they said, I showed up an hour later. It's a clear sidewalk. We walked up. There are people milling about. Cops open the door. We are shrugging. We walk inside for a few minutes. We walk out. No idea anything ever happened. Next thing we know, the feds are at our door. These are not people who even, as you described, Tucker, these are people who are just there to see Trump speak and happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So how about no on that? I mean, when is honestly, I mean, I don't want to put anyone in jeopardy, but like until people say we're just not playing along with this anymore, obviously Congress isn't going to help.
You know the problem,
We're
I think?
totally for it.
We talked before about religion. Christianity is like the battlefield of the culture war, and you were talking about demonism and Satanism creeping into the culture in a lot of ways. I think one of the problems with Christianity is that it encourages people to be subservient to a church, and then therefore subconsciously they become subservient to a government. Like, why aren't they saying no?
Well, a man has as many masters as he does vices, and the reality is you're a slave to something, and if you choose to be a slave to God as opposed to the government, you will be the most difficult possible man to conquer.
But it's the way they define God. You got to be aware that they're
we
not
didn't define
manipulating
God.
you.
He told us who he was.
I think, Ian.
I agree.
But I don't disagree with Ian's point. But I think it would have to be refined in that there are people who masquerade, pretend, or don't truly understand, and would use faith to manipulate others. I mean, we see this in government, especially when Democrats claim to be the real Christians, but then say the church is in favor of, say, abortion or something like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm speaking from a thoroughly Protestant perspective, but I don't see my reading of Christianity, just like the text, does not at all indicate loyalty to a church. It indicates fealty to God.
Yes.
And so, first of all, it's not incompatible with being a citizen at all. I think Christians make the best citizens, actually, and you can absolutely support your government and support your God. But if it comes down to it, if your government is actively opposing God, you really do have to make a choice between those two masters.
And I'll make a quick point. Sorry, Charlie. I'll make a quick point and shout out our good friend Bill Maher, because it's a point I've made frequently that whether Bill acknowledges or not, as an atheist, his moral framework is built on Judeo-Christian values this country was founded on.
Does he say that now?
He doesn't, but it's a fact.
Well, Tom Holland wrote the book called Dominion, where he's an atheist secularist who said that we all have a Christian inheritance, whether you like it or not.
That's absolutely right.
Absolutely. Bill Maher believes in free speech. He believes in innocent until proven
Those
guilty.
are all Christian values.
Christian values, and I wanted to explore years ago why the founding fathers decided upon these amendments to the Constitution and the framework as it was. And you learn a lot about how the Bible influenced their views of what is just and moral.
And so just to, at the surface reading, you might say, Christians aren't supposed to fight back against tyranny. Exodus 1, the midwives to the Hebrews, they disobeyed the order of Pharaoh where they said, throw all the babies in the river. They said, no, we're not going to do that. And God said, dealt well with them, it says in Exodus 1. Daniel 6, Daniel disobeyed the order, says, you can't pray anymore. He says, nope, I'm going to keep praying. And he opened up the window and prayed proudly, and it ended up in the lion's den. In Acts, it says you obey God, not man. So look, throughout Christianity, we have seen, honestly, one of the most successful movements against tyranny are when Christians are brought to a breaking point. Christians can be very agreeable, and then as soon as that snaps, disobedience to tyrants is obedience to God.
I want to shout out Seamus real quick when he said you would be the most difficult man to conquer, and this is exactly why I think there is such a tremendous push against anything that is related to Christianity, because these are people who follow God, who obey God, and you need someone to be beholden to a man, because a man can change the rules at any moment.
That's right.
Yeah, well, and so you guys, I know you mentioned you're coming at it from a Protestant perspective. I'm the resident Catholic here, so I have a different perspective on the church, but I will say part of the reason I appreciate you so much and the things that you've said on air is because even though you're an Episcopalian, you're somehow like the most Catholic commentator on air. I find the things that you say about like economic justice and also social conservatism tend to line up very closely with the political values that I have as a Catholic. But I would say that, of course, as Christians, we should be good citizens and obey civil authorities when they are not asking us to do something evil. But as soon as you're commanded to do something evil, you have to resist that.
Yeah, the scriptures are very clear about that. You obey God, not man.
And the church tradition is very clear about that.
Tucker, you made some very interesting comments recently that has been going viral all over social media when you were specifically talking about UFOs. And you were specifically talking about something that is hard to kind of really understand here. I was wondering, what's your kind of take on all of this? Because I see this as a spiritual war. Do you see this as a spiritual war? What are your kind of core belief systems when it comes to addressing the larger evils of the system?
Well, as I so often do, I spoke incompletely. I didn't fully explain myself. In the clip that you're referring to, which like 8 people have sent me, in outrage, that I basically said there are things that I know that I won't say, which of course is not exactly right. I don't know. I mean, I can't prove it, and I really do try to like say things that I really believe are true and are provably so. And so that's kind of my hesitance. If I had facts, I would say them. It's my personal belief, based on a fair amount of evidence, that they're not aliens. They've always been here. And I do think it's spiritual. That's my view. So, and again, it's not provable, but based on the evidence, I think.
I'm with you.
Absolutely. Well, the military has been working in this realm for a very long time. They have been also trying to weaponize it. There's also a lot of crazy experiments that they did with DMT, hooking people up essentially to DMT IVs, having people go off into the spiritual realm. So if you're not paying attention, you don't understand that there's a larger kind of energetic frequency in battle happening.
But can I say one thing? If the U.S. government has in fact had direct contact with these beings, whatever they are, I've already told you what I think they are, and has entered into some sort of agreement with them, which is the claim of informed people, I would say, whether they're right or wrong, I can't say conclusively. But if that is true, I mean, it's a very, very, very heavy thing.
Yeah. A lot of people say interdimensional beings.
Right. I want to ask: Are angels and demons, or how would you describe these beings?
You know, these are, again, I'm getting into the realm of conjecture, so I just want to say that flat out.
Entity.
But one thing I know for a dead certain fact, having seen it, is that there is good and evil, that we are being acted upon at all times. And I think every person can feel that in himself. I mean, there are moments when you are moved to do things that are much better than you actually are, and that are also more evil and destructive than you actually are. You are subject to forces from outside yourself. That is absolutely true. Now, we can argue about what they are, but every person in the room, if he's reflective, will tell you, yes, I know what you're talking about. And so there are forces that are not human, that do exist in a spiritual realm of some kind, that we cannot see, and that when you think about it, sort of make you think we live in an ant farm.
Yeah.
Right? And that is real, okay?
And there's many artists also talking about how essentially what they do in their greatest works of art is usually done through channeling.
Of course.
And there is an aspect
not
of this
freedom
that I think,
chins, by the way.
Yeah, but definitely not that
Well, he's
anymore.
channeling-
we haven't made
not that
anything
good
good.
yet.
By the way, every artist will tell you that.
Exactly.
Every artist.
That something happened, that they're not themselves, that they just were doing their art, and then something just
Transcendent.
went.
No, but
through
and it's
them.
not just visual arts. It's every creative act brings you closer to something outside the human realm, and you can feel it, whether it's woodworking or writing or painting a painting or writing an opera or writing a rap song or whatever. Anything that is true and beautiful, or anything that is dark and destructive, is almost certainly a product of forces acting upon you, and you can feel it.
God created us to participate in creation with him, to participate in his creativity and make things.
That's right.
And since everyone here is cool, I'll say this. With respect to demons and spiritual forces, there's a priest who was laicized towards the end of his career. He's relatively controversial, but he was an exorcist by the name of Malachi Martin. And one thing he said about exorcism cases is that in films, you see all of these over-the-top portrayals of heads spinning and vomiting. And he said when it comes to things like vomiting and all of these supernatural visual indicators of possession, that those are the cases that are the most mild because the soul's trying to fight back. And with forms of perfect possession, the most dangerous forms of possession, you can't tell when you look at the person because they're perfectly content with the evil thing they're doing. And then you look at the way people in D.C. act, you look at the way our political leaders act, and you go, is it that much of a stretch to say some of these people? And this is not some crazy outsider belief. Jesus performs exorcisms in the Bible. Like, this is not something that Christians...
And does it make you wonder that no doctor has ever been able to explain where exactly schizophrenia comes from?
That's exactly.
I bet it's parasites.
And that we cannot treat it. We can suppress it, but we cannot treat it. And there's no kind of baseline for it at all. There's science that has not penetrated schizophrenia. So, like, what is that?
And that's the other thing. That's because, in my view, as a 28-year-old cartoonist who knows basically nothing about the world, but if I would be so bold as to speculate on this, I think part of that is the problem with psychology is it doesn't take into account that the human person is a body-soul composite, and that you are not just chemical reactions happening at the level of the brain in a series of tangled up pathologies that produce certain behaviors and states of consciousness. You have a soul. There is a spiritual component to you that can be acted on by outside spiritual forces.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.